All right. So let's go back to the original couple of questions that I raised, the way that we were going to test this idea of cultural imperialism. So the question was, does the existence of McDonald's within China help to create a homogenous global culture? Well, um, I don't know. You can try to answer that. But when this video first started and you saw this picture of Ronald McDonald, does anybody, the first thing that popped into your head is, oh, look, American culture? Well, maybe. Yeah, there's certainly some American culture here, but there's also a lot of other things, right? And so I would say that Western products and services are being used in China to fulfill new functions in a changing lifestyle. Again, how many of us use McDonald's in order to go on dates? How many of us go on dates to McDonald's in order to show off our worldliness? Do we think of McDonald's as being a way to learn about our own culture? Would you take your children to McDonald's in order for them to learn about American culture? All these different things that people use McDonald's for are for very specific Chinese reasons, right? So yes, there are golden arches, and yes, there's a goofy looking clown, and the food looks very similar, if not exactly the same. But they're being used for very different reasons. So just a little bit of research tells you that the reasons that people are using them is because women want to show off their new status in China. That is something that is Chinese specific. Young people want a study hall. There's all these different things that are going on that are, again, because of Chinese culture, not because of necessarily American culture. It provides a new space for the performance of changing social status through consumption. So this is also a China that is in flux. A lot of things are changing about Chinese society, and people are sort of dealing with that. So they're using this performance of changing social status, as I mentioned before. So just think about the experience of what eating at a McDonald's in China might be like for you. If you took a flight right now to Beijing and walked through this 700-seat McDonald's with 29 cash registers and all this stuff, what would that be like eating there for you versus eating at McDonald's in Dayton? I mean, how many people have even ever gone into a McDonald's in order to eat? When was the last time you walked? I mean, we're a couple years out of we're just out of the pandemic, so maybe it's been a while since you've eaten in restaurants in general. I'm not sure, but how many people go to eat inside of a McDonald's? Typically, we would get takeout through the drive-through, but that's not true in China, where many people don't own cars. Just so much about this experience of eating McDonald's is different, and for different reasons. So let's go to this next question. If I can get my slides, there we go. Let's go to this next question. Does McDonald's constitute a form of cultural imperialism? Well, I would argue, and many anthropologists would argue, that McDonald's has changed as much as an institution as locals have changed as a consequence of its introduction. So read that sentence again. McDonald's has adapted to China. They have Uncle and Auntie McDonald. They target young people for very specific reasons related to China. They have a lover's corner. They have a study hall. McDonald's as an institution, the four-story McDonald's, 700 seats, has changed. And so locals have also changed as a response to McDonald's being there, but this is a two-way street. And what this is a very important concept we call in anthropology localization. So localization is sort of the counter to globalization. Something like McDonald's that started as a small restaurant in Los Angeles. If you didn't know that, it's from Los Angeles. Started as a small restaurant, and it became popular, and it nationalized. It became a national brand, and then it globalized. It went around the world, and everybody started eating it. But then, as it globalizes, it also localizes. It also becomes specific to specific areas. Keep that in mind. So does McDonald's contribute to the westernization of Chinese culture? Well, I don't know. Who's to say what is Western and what is not? So if we thought of something that was quintessentially Chinese, we might think about the fortune cookie. The fortune cookie you get with every Chinese meal you eat in the United States. However, when I was in China, I never once saw a fortune cookie. And in fact, the fortune cookie was invented in the 1920s by a Japanese man that was living in San Francisco. So does that make fortune cookies American? Does it make them Western? Does it make them Japanese? Or does it make it Chinese? Or, I don't know, it becomes kind of a political question of how we want to label something as this is definitely Chinese, this is definitely not Chinese, etc. This is Western, this is not. General Tao's chicken is another example. General Tao is a famous person in Chinese history in China, but not for their chicken. I don't know why. He is actually a general. or was a general. And yeah, so it has nothing to do with chicken. Sort of like Colonel Sanders in the United States. He's famous for his chicken. He's this military man for some reason. But the General Tao's chicken is very much a localized version of Chinese food. It does not exist in China. It's very sweet and sticky, and Chinese people would not like General Tao's chicken. Most of them. So that's an example of localization of Chinese food in the United States. And let's just, for a thought experiment, why do we never worry about becoming Easternized when we go to eat at a Chinese restaurant in the United States? We probably eat at Chinese restaurants. Most of the people in this class have eaten at a Chinese restaurant, but did you somehow become more Chinese having eaten there? Well, I don't know. You might have gone there to learn about Chinese culture, just like Chinese people go to McDonald's to learn about American culture in the 80s. But I'm not really sure. There's a power play. There's this thing about being American and being a Western, modern a consumer of global culture that we consider ourselves to be, where we are somehow afforded the ability to one day eat at a Chinese restaurant, the next at an Indian, and the next at a French, and the next at a Peruvian restaurant. And that doesn't change us. That's just who we are as Americans. We are the melting pot, and so we're allowed to do that. But other cultures, if they eat food from around the world, that's bad, and it's Westernization, and it's cultural imperialism, and we should try to stop that. So let's think about that a little bit. Let's try to interrogate that. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the class will interrogate some of these ideas.